Right, this is going to be a read aloud of pages 164 to 167. So we're continuing our study about Confucius. All right, the 5 relationships. Confucius said there are 5 different kinds of relationships between people. In each of these relationships, he said, there is a proper way to behave. His plan for an orderly society with a good government was based on these relationships. The relationship between parent and child is the most important of all, Confucius said. That's because during childhood, children learn the proper way to live from their parents. According to Confucius, a person becomes a good man by first learning to be a good son, and then remaining good as he grows up. Confucius taught that a good son obeyed his parents, shows a loving respect for them, and tries to learn from them. Confucius certainly believed that his teaching applied to girls too, but he focused on boys since his students were young men, and men ruled China. One of Confucius's pupils once asked him how he could show loving respect to his parents. Confucius's answers, which you've heard before, was, "Let your parents' only worry be that you may fall sick." By respecting parents and learning the right way to live from them, said Confucius, children gradually become good members of society, and parents in turn take responsibility for the care and behavior of their children. Confucius said that 3 other relationships are like that between parent and child: the relationship between an elder brother and a younger brother, between husband and wife, and between ruler and subject. The younger child owed respect to the elder child. The wife owed respect to the husband. In Confucius's day, the wife was considered subordinate to the husband in the family. And a subject owed respect to the king. At the same time, the elder child, husband, and king all had to act in a way that made them worthy of respect. The 5th relationship, according to Confucius, is between friends. He believed that true friends are equals. They owe respect to each other, and each must be worthy of the other's respect. Confucius believed that a successful society depends on people taking their proper roles in each of these relationships. If people followed rules of good conduct and were honest, sincere, and respectful toward each other in these 5 relationships, then the entire world would be at peace. All right, and this heading, a golden rule and the way to heaven. Confucius tried to encourage harmony between individuals. He wanted people to respect each other. To do this, he taught the earliest known form of the Golden Rule. Do not do to others what you do not want them to do to you, he said. Each person should decide how he wants other people to treat him. Then he should treat other people the same way. Each person should remember his duties to others. Why? Because he would not want others to forget their obligations to him. To Confucius, learning how to live with other people was the most important thing in life, more important even than making offerings to gods. He carefully instructed his students about how they should think and act toward one another. Whenever you go in the world, he said, you should treat all those whom you meet as if you are receiving a highly honored guest. Confucius said that a wise man is one who knows and understands others. A good man is one who loves others. Confucius didn't talk about religion and gods. He spoke of heaven, but he didn't say what heaven was. He didn't think it could be explained in words. He seemed to think of it as a great spirit of wisdom and goodness. People should try to follow the way of heaven in their thoughts and actions, he said. The way of heaven was the spirit of wisdom and goodness that prompted people to consider the needs of others and act as gentlemen. If people were open to that spirit of goodness and followed the way of heaven, they would lead a good life and find happiness. Confucius taught that people should work hard to think better and act better. Everyone should always be asking himself, what is the right thing to do? Confucius thought that everyone can improve himself. He believed that people are basically good and that anyone who tries can learn the right thoughts and behavior. Okay, and then the king and good government. Confucius spent much of his career thinking and talking about good government. He believed that if government is bad, people can find it hard to lead good lives. There's an old story that illustrates his belief. One day Confucius saw a woman weeping by a tomb. He said to her, "You weep as though you are very sad." "So I am," replied the woman. "In this place my husband's father was killed by a tiger. My husband was also killed by a tiger, and now my son has been killed too." "If this is so, why do you not leave this terrible place?" asked Confucius. And before we move on, just take a look at some of the pictures here. Um, Confucius encouraged people to treat each other with respect. And then right here, an emperor receives his due, the reverence and honor of his subjects. All right, let's move to the next page. The woman replied, "Here there are tigers, but at least the government is not bad." "My pupils," Confucius taught, "hear and remember, bad government is worse than a fierce tiger." Confucius taught that the people should treat the king like a father and follow his orders. A person who came before the king had to kneel, bow deeply, and touch his head to the floor 3 times. Such a way of bowing was called kowtow, and it was meant to show great respect. The king had duties too. Confucius said that a ruler had to deserve his people's respect. He must be upright or wise and good. Then the people would honor him because he set a good example. They would be willing to follow him because they trusted him. They would want to obey and would not have to be forced to follow the king's orders. Confucius thought that a good king would not need to punish people to make them obey. Confucius taught that while the king was above the people, heaven was above the king. Thus the king owed respect to the heavenly spirit of wisdom and goodness. He was expected to follow the way of heaven by ruling wisely and well. A king who did so would have happy people, and heaven would bless his rule. If a ruler departed from that path, heaven would allow the people to overthrow him. Confucius told a ruler, "If you are good and want only what is good, then the people will be good. The ruler is like the wind, the people are like the grass. The grass must bend in the direction the wind blows." Confucius said that the king must work hard to create good government. He did not believe that ordinary people should share in government. And we're going to come back over to this in just a minute. We haven't talked about it yet, but then we will. Still, he thought that the ruler should listen to complaints from the people, so he would know what they needed. Confucius did not say how a government should be organized or explain what rules the government should follow. He thought such matters should be left to the king and his advisors to decide. But Confucius believed firmly that an upright ruler would establish good government. It made no difference how much power the ruler had. As long as he was a good man, the government would be good. That idea would be challenged in years to come, but it was revolutionary for its time. Confucius lived at a time when the power to rule was passed from generation to generation. Being born into a ruling family wasn't enough to be an upright ruler, Confucius insisted. An upright ruler must have good character. He must work hard to master the rules of good behavior and good government. He had to set a good example. An exemplary person helps bring out what is beautiful in other people and discourages what is ugly in them, Confucius said. A king might gain power by inheriting it or conquering others, but he was justified in ruling only by following the way of heaven, thus bringing prosperity, safety, and harmony to his realm. And then I wish to speak no more. Tradition says that one morning in 479 BC, when he was 72, Confucius woke, spent some time walking in his courtyard, and then suddenly announced, "I wish to speak no more." He went back to his bedroom, lay down, and remained there day after day without saying a word. A hushed crowd waited in the street outside his house, knowing the end had come. On the seventh day, Confucius passed away. His students buried him on a riverbank in a grave that today attracts admirers from all over the world. Confucius died believing he had failed, but he did not fail. After his death, his pupils wrote down his teachings and sayings in a book that has come to be known as the Analects of Confucius. The ideas in this slim volume were so alive with wisdom that they inspired all who came across them. Confucius's students went their separate ways and traveled through China as teachers, government officials, and court advisors, putting what they had learned to work. And so Confucius's ideas spread across the land he loved until they were known by millions of people. Confucianism, all the teachings of Confucius together, became the single most important force in Chinese life. It was a set of ideas that would influence China for centuries to come. And you can see here, there's a picture today. A temple stands near the burial place of the great Chinese philosopher Confucius. And then over here are some of the Analects from Confucius. So after Confucius died, his students wrote down what they remembered from their conversations with the great teacher. Their own students continued the process, as did later generations. So the book we know as the Analects, or sayings, of Confucius is actually the work of perhaps 3 centuries of scholarship. Here are some sayings from the Analects. First, put yourself in order, then be sure you act justly and sincerely toward others, and you will be a happy man. To those working in government, Confucius said, go before the people with your own good example and work hard for their sake. An exemplary person helps bring out what is beautiful in other people and discourages what is ugly in them. A petty person does just the opposite. Let the ruler be as a ruler ought to be. Let the official be as an official ought to be. Let the father be as a father ought to be. Let the son be as a son ought to be. Then there will be good life and good government. It is the wiser person who gives rather than takes. He who studies but does not think is lost. He who thinks but does not study is dangerous. Is it not pleasant to learn with a constant perseverance and application? He who wishes to secure the good of others has already secured his own. And that's the reading for pages 164 to 167.